We have 64 places on our historic register. Not only that, but we have 10 places in town that are on the National Register of Historic Places.
That is the Clifton Park town historian sharing just how rich in history this community really is. When you think of historical places in the capital region, the town of Clifton Park may not be one of the first places that comes to your mind, but the town historian feels it should. And after this story, perhaps it will.
Oh, the patent was dated 1708.
This is where some of the very first Clifton Park Town Board meetings happened in the mid-1800s, inside this historic building known as Grooms Tavern off exit 8A of the Northway. The building is now a cultural center.
It's now called Fire Road, but it's old 146, yes.
We meet the Clifton Park town historian here, John Scherer.
For people who say, Clifton Park doesn't have a lot of history. What's the history of Clifton Park? There is a tremendous amount of history here.
Yes, in fact, we have a Historic Preservation Commission in town. We have 64 places on our historic register. Not only that, but we have 10 places in town that are on the National Register of Historic Places.
John shows us the original map of Clifton Park.
So this is the original map. Northway would have been here, and this is where the shopping area ended up. Wow.
Yes.
The original map displayed 12 homes along the river, 2 in what is now known as Vischer Ferry. One of those homes still stands today.
This is the oldest house in Clifton Park.
It dates back to 1740.
It's the oldest house that's standing in Clifton Park.
And it still stands
And
today.
it's still standing.
Clifton Park, once a farming town, also thrived off mining of molding sand. John explains the history of Clifton Park's transformation is transportation, starting with ferries in the 1720s, and then the construction of the Erie Canal in 1825.
And that was the beginning of the transformation of Clifton Park?
And so, yes, not only one blacksmith shop in Vischer Ferry, but several stores now.
Fast forward to the Northway and how that changed everything.
Yes, and here's the Northway, the building of the Northway Bridge that brought people to Clifton Park.
That was in 1959.
That was the next major growth period for Clifton Park. Before the Northway came, the population here was about 2,000 people. Hard to believe.
Wow.
Because now we're talking about 45,000 people here in Clifton Park. And they keep coming.
That's when prominent builder Robert Van Patten bought up farmland along the Northway and created the first neighborhoods of Clifton Park, known as the Knolls. And the growth and development exploded from there. So when people question if Clifton Park has history, this is John's response.
So we do have history, and people need to get away from exit 9 to find that history.
He's so passionate. So what changes has John seen for himself? He's lived here as a resident since 1971. So what has changed in the past 50 plus years? A lot. We're going to talk about it live at 5.
A lot is right. Yeah. In a half a century, boy, he's seen it all.
He sure has. He was so fun to talk to. Excited to share more of our conversation. And we will continue our special coverage of Live Around the 518.
Most people may not realize Clifton Park, where we are today for Live Around the 518, has a rich history.
I knew they had a history. I didn't believe it went this deep. Get this, the original map of Clifton Park actually dates back to 1765.
Incredible.
Wow. So, Sabrina Dami, you met with Clifton Park's town historian to learn more about this pretty interesting town and how it all got its start.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. There's this perception, right, that Clifton Park is all about the shopping plazas, the traffic lights, the traffic, but there's actually so much more to this area than that. So before all of that and surrounding all of that, there's a story that may surprise you. The original map, as Steve said, of Clifton Park dates back to 1765. The Clifton Park land patent was granted by Queen Anne of England, and on that map there are 12 homesteads listed. 2 are in what is now known as Vischer Ferry, and 1 still stands today. It is the oldest home still standing in Clifton Park, dates back to 1740. 1940. It's in the Vischer Ferry Historic District now, right off exit 8. So that's the oldest house still standing here. And another historic house here in this area, it's owned by the Garnsey family, guys. And the Garnseys, now Nathan Garnsey is the one who started this. He is said to be one of the town's founding fathers. His home, known as the Garnsey Estate, is listed on the historic register, and his descendants still live in that home today. So all this rich history shared with us today by the Clifton Park town historian John Scherer. He talks a lot about what has changed since he first moved here, which was 50 plus years ago.
When you first moved to Clifton Park, what did it look like? You said it was 1971.
1971. Clifton Park was still pretty rural when we moved here. There were really no stoplights in town. I think there might have been maybe one bank. We had to go to Latham to get a mortgage.
No traffic lights, no major big shops at that time.
Oh, it was such an easy commute to Albany. There was no traffic either.
That's so different.
I don't know where all these people are coming from, but
he's such a character, guys, and had so much to share. I learned so much from him today.
The history of Clifton Park's transformation is transportation. We shared with you at 4 and 5 the massive changes, but also the historic homes and buildings that still stand today.
Yeah, it's incredible. So now new at 6, how did Clifton Park become Clifton Park? Clifton Park was largely a farming town and thrived off mining for molding sand to supply the cast iron industry. The transportation changes started with the early settlement using ferries along the Mohawk River in 1727, and then in 1825 the construction of the Erie Canal. Today I met with the Clifton Park town historian John Scherer. We met at the historic Grooms Tavern, which was once a general store. Now it's a cultural center located off exit 8 in Rexford. But this building was the setting of a pivotal moment in Clifton Park's history.
it was thriving. The town was thriving, too much so. We were Half Moon at that time. Half Moon was a bigger town. We were part of the town of Half Moon. And then in 1828, they decided we needed to have two towns because the population had increased. So they met at the Tavern of James Groom, where we are right now in this building.
And it became Half Moon and Clifton Park.
Yes, the two towns. And Clifton Park was the last town to be formed in Saratoga County. So we are the newest town and about to celebrate our bicentennial in a couple of years.
Just a baby.
Yeah.
So fast forward to 1959, the Northway with the twin bridges extending the highway into Clifton Park. John Scherer, who you just heard from, says there are 64 places on the historical register, 10 places on the National Register of Historic Places right here in Clifton Park.